Hello everyone. In this session, I'm going to discuss the remaining part of chapter number 4. So in the last recorded session, I talked about price elasticity of demand, determinants of elasticity of demand. We discussed the relationship between elasticity and total revenue. And then finally, I talked about uh, different shapes of the demand curve. So flatter demand curve shows elastic demand, steeper demand curve shows inelastic demand. Now we discuss the application of price elasticity of demand. And these are the three important applications that you have to go through these applications in your textbook, from your textbook basically. So number one, sales tax or excise tax. So government will impose excise tax on products that have inelastic demand. The impact would be higher tax revenues. Why? Because tax revenues will increase the price of a product. But since the demand is inelastic, consumers are not going to reduce their demand. So quantity demanded for the product, for that product, will not decrease a lot. And therefore, government will make uh, higher tax revenues. The other application is crack down on illegal drugs. The problem with cracking down on illegal drug is that the demand for these drugs is pretty inelastic. So if you try to increase the price by restricting the supply, demand will not decrease. Demand means quantity demand. There's no shift in demand curve. Quantity demand will not decrease because these people are addicted to these drugs. And therefore, crime rate will increase because now they need more money to buy expensive drugs. So that is another problem. And this is basically an application of elasticity of demand. Third, good harvest, not good news for farmers. This is a common, problem with many developing countries that are agrarian in nature. So whenever the farmers in those countries they adopt new technologies that will increase their productivity, this increase in productivity, of course, will help them produce more. But that is not good news for them. How? Let me quickly draw a diagram. I could have shown you the same analysis using the diagram that I've already drawn, but let me draw it again. So this is demand curve, which is pretty inelastic. You know this, right? And this is supply curve. Right now, this is the price level, P1. Now, because of the technology, advancement in technology, the productivity of these farmers will increase, and now they are producing more. So supply curve shifts to the right in this direction, rightward, right? So when supply curve shifts to the right, see, the price has gone down from P1 to 2. Farmers cannot sell their extra production without lowering the price. So these farmers lower their price levels from P1 to P2 in order to sell more. But see what is happening. Here, this was the initial demand, and now the increase in quantity demand is very less. And therefore, that demand, let me write here, demand is inelastic for agriculture produce, for example, for wheat. If you go to, let's say, Walmart, and if you see the price of flour is $5 less, are you going to buy 500 kilos of flour? No, because you don't need it. So this is pretty inelastic in nature. The demand is inelastic, and that is why I had drawn this pretty steep demand curve. So if elasticity of demand is less than 1, and if price decreases, I showed you in the previous session that if price decreases with the inelastic demand, total revenue will actually decrease. So farmers will not be benefited from this increase in productivity simply because of the nature of the product. Because wheat or other agriculture produce uh, have inelastic demand. Okay. Now I will demonstrate to you again that, remember in chapter number 3, I talked about taxes and subsidies, and I have drawn basically diagrams that show that showed uh, the burden of a tax was actually distributed equally, right? So if the government imposed a $2 tax, then both sellers and buyers were contributing $1 each, right? So they are basically sharing the burden equally. But this sharing of burden will depend on the elasticity of both demand and supply curve. We haven't talked about elasticity of supply. We only will consider here elasticity of demand. Look at these two diagrams on your screen. So I tried my level best, it's hand drawn diagrams. I tried my level best to draw the supply curve with almost a very similar shape, right? So supply curve in both diagrams are identical. I'm assuming identical, right? And in this diagram, that is I'm sorry, that is, hold on a second. That is, in this diagram, demand is pretty inelastic. Notice inelastic, pretty steeper. In the second case, demand is elastic, flatter. See what is happening. Suppose a tax is imposed on sellers, not buyers, because notice there's no shift in demand curve. So I told you in chapter number 3, if a $3 tax is imposed on sellers, the supply curve will shift upward or leftward by the amount of $3. So the difference, the vertical distance between these two supply curve is $3. Now see what is happening. So initially, the price, this was the equilibrium initially, right? S1 curve and D1 curve. And this is the price, $10. So buyers are paying $10. Sellers are receiving $10. Market is cleared, or market clears. With the imposition of taxes of $3, supply curve shifts upward. And now the equilibrium price is $12. Notice buyers or consumers are paying now $12 because of the taxes. Okay? But sellers are not receiving $12. Why? Because they have to pay taxes as well. So from $12, when they receive $12, they give $3 to the government and keep the remaining $9. So basically, this is the price that buyers are paying, but sellers are receiving only $9. Because I know the difference between 9 and 12 is 3. How do I know? Because the gap between these two supply curve is $3, which I have written here. So consumers are paying $2 extra, because earlier they were paying only $10, now they are paying $12. And sellers are now receiving $1 less, because they were receiving $10. After tax, they are receiving only $9. So see, the distribution of burden is not equal. Consumers are sharing more than sellers, although the tax is imposed on sellers. So sellers actually are transferring their burden on consumers. Why? Because they know that their demand curve is inelastic. That is, if price increases, if they shift their burden on consumer will still be buying that product because of the inelastic demand, and therefore they're shifting their burden on consumers. So in this case, when demand is inelastic, consumer will share the burden more than the producers. Look at the other diagram where I have drawn demand curve pretty flatter, inelastic demand. So the demand is more responsive to changes in price. Suppliers are not, they know that if demand is elastic and if they charge higher prices, they are going to lose their customers. So if the same tax, $3, see, so this is same $3. If the same tax is imposed on, once again, producers, on sellers, see what is happening. Initial price was $10. When the supply curve shifts upward, it will intersect demand curve at this point, not at 12, but only at 11. Why 11? Because suppliers cannot charge more than $11. If they try to charge more than $11, then they are going to lose more customers because their demand is elastic. They are responsive to increase in price. So consumers will pay only $11 after tax, one extra dollar, which is I've written here. So consumers are paying one extra dollar. Producers are not receiving $11. They are receiving $11 and then they pay $3 taxes. So they are actually receiving only $9. Right? No, it should be 8. Sorry. It should be 8. I'm sorry. Because it's a $3 tax, right? So this is a, sorry. This is a $3 tax. The $3 tax means this number, I'm writing here and I'm recording at the same time. So you know, this number should be 8. How do I know this is 8? Because 11 minus 3 is 8, not 9. So my mistake, I'm sorry. So this 9 should be 8. So 11 minus 3 is 8. So producers are getting only $8. Earlier, before the tax, they were receiving $10. So there's a loss of $2. Now in this case, you can see suppliers are unable to shift their burden on consumers or buyers, and therefore they are sharing the burden. Okay, so the sharing of both buyers and sellers, they share the burden of tax depending on the elasticity of demand. Once you know the price elasticity of demand, then we have 3 other types of elasticity. And I'm not going to discuss in detail because I've already discussed price elasticity of demand. Instead of price elasticity of demand, we have price elasticity of supply. Sometimes we write it price, sometimes we don't. But elasticity of supply means price elasticity of supply. Same formula, exactly same thing. Everything is same, except you will get always positive number. That is, if price increases by 1%, then quantity supply must increase by whatever percentage, right? Because suppliers are willing to supply more. We know supply curve is upward sloping line. So if I draw supply curve instead of demand, sorry, QSX, let me erase this, I'm sorry. So this is QSX, price of X. Supply curve is upward sloping like this, S curve, right? Same formula, instead of quantity demand for X, quantity demanded for X, you just write quantity supplied of this product X. And similarly, change in price of X divided by average price of X. Then we have 2 more elasticity. And for the last 2 elasticities, there are a number of practice questions that I've already uploaded to your course website and also in the PowerPoint slides as well. Make sure you solve them. And if you don't understand them, if you have any concerns or questions, don't hesitate to ask me. If you send me your message through via Blackboard messaging service, the response time is 2 business days. But if you text me on my cell 587-998-7779, then I will respond quickly because I have my cell most of the time with me, but not the Blackboard messaging service, particularly during weekends. Okay, what is income elasticity? Same idea. Income elasticity means change in Q, and this, remember, this quantity supplied is quantity demand, it's not quantity supplied, but I did not write. So change in Q divided by average Q, I don't write average, divided by change in I this time. I stands for income here in this case. You could have written Y as well, but I'm using Y as another product, so that's why I wrote I. So change in I divided by average I. This is not I, this is average I, and multiply by 100, multiply by 100. Once you calculate this, there are so many different possibilities. Number 1, first possibility is that you get minus 1.3 number. So if you get negative number means what? Negative means when your income increases, you are going to demand less. That is the meaning of negative coefficient. These are called inferior goods. So whenever your elasticity of income or income elasticity, I'm sorry, is a negative number, doesn't matter whether this is elastic or inelastic. If it is minus 0.5 or minus 0.1.5 or minus 0.3, doesn't matter. If you have a negative sign, that means the product is inferior good. For inferior good, the relationship between income and demand is negative. So when your income increases, you're not going to buy a second-hand 1995 or 2005 Mazda car. That is inferior to you. You will go for high quality and luxurious automobiles. So those products are inferior. That is when your income increases, you are not going to demand those products. One thing. Second possibility, that you get a positive number. That is this. So income elasticity, oh, I should have written, if I write, it should not be Y then. It should be I, I'm sorry. In the book, it says epsilon Y, but they use Y here. So since I use I here, so this is EI, not E, epsilon I, epsilon I, epsilon I. Sorry, but it doesn't matter. You could have written Y as well. It's not incorrect. Now, if income elasticity is greater than 0, that is a positive number. So when your income increases, the demand for that product will also increase. These products are called normal products. So normal products have positive relationship between income and the demand. If income increases, your demand will also increase. If income decreases, your demand will also decrease. So if I write let's say I give you two numbers. I give you one positive number 0.5 and the other positive number as 1.3. Same number. Oh no, I should not take this. Hold on. Let me make it 1.4. First interpret what do we mean by 0.5, what do we mean by 1.4. Simple. If your income increases by 1%, not by $100 or $50, if your income increases by 1% or 1%, this will increase your demand by 0.5%. In the second case, if your income increases by 1 percentage point, then your demand will increase by 1.4%. Let me put this way. And a 1% increase in price will lead to a 1.4% increase in demand. This is the meaning. But notice that one positive number is less than 1. The other positive number is greater than 1. So I know if the number is positive, the product is normal good or normal product. But there are two types of normal products. If your elasticity is positive but less than 1, that is this case, 0.5, inelastic. So if your demand is inelastic but positive, these products are called necessities or necessity. So a necessity product has income elasticity that is positive but less than 1. This is what I've written here, that elasticity of income elasticity is greater than 0 but less than 1. Product is a necessity. If you have a positive income elasticity and also greater than 1, product is a necessity. If you have a positive income elasticity and also greater than 1 and also elastic, that is if income elasticity is greater than 1, positive 1, not negative, positive. So first positive and then also greater than 1. So this product is a luxury product. So for luxury product, the relationship is positive and also elastic. For necessity product, the income elasticity is positive but inelastic. Then we have the last form. This is called cross price elasticity demand. Don't get confused. When we started this chapter, I started with price elasticity of demand. When I write only price elasticity of demand, I mean the price is for the same product that I'm considering. That's why I always write percentage change in QDX divided by PX, same price. So in order to avoid this confusion, sometimes we call the first elasticity that we discussed, we call that elasticity as own price elasticity of demand. Own price, not cross, own price. But normally we don't write own. So we just say cross price elasticity of demand. The other one is cross price elasticity of demand. What is cross price elasticity of demand? In cross price elasticity of demand, we write like this, epsilon EXY. So XY are two products. So we will take one product's demand and the other product's price. This is what we do. So here, see what I'm doing. I am taking demand for X and see price of Y, not X. Because if I had taken X, this would have been own price elasticity of demand for X. This is cross price elasticity. If price of Y changes, what is the change in the demand for another product X? You can easily calculate this, and you will see the examples in the PowerPoint slides as well. There are two possibilities. One possibility is that you get a negative answer, and the other one is you get a positive answer. If you get a negative answer, it means these two products, X and Y, are complements. Remember, complements with E, not with I. Okay. So complements goods have negative cross price elasticity of demand always. That is, when the price of bread increases, demand for butter decreases. Why? Because these two products, bread and butter, are complements to each other. That is, you have to use them together. So if one is becoming expensive, consumer demand less for other product as well. If the elasticity, cross price elasticity is greater than zero, positive number, it means that these two products, X and Y, are substitutes. So if price of butter increases, then demand for margarine will also increase, positive. Both are moving in the same direction. That is why you have positive elasticity. So butter and margarine are substitutes. When butter becomes expensive, people would go and demand more margarine. See? So this is cross price elasticity demand. Now the summary of all these elasticities are given in the last PowerPoint slides of this chapter. So let me show you that last slide, and then I'll stop here. So this is the second part of chapter number 4. Make sure you go through all these examples. So you have to kindly go through these slides. So this is one example. Another example, elasticity and total revenue, elasticity versus slope. See, these are all different shapes we have already discussed. Application of price elasticity, and the number of slides that explain this application. Excise tax. Why might a war on drugs increase crime rates? When you read C, demand curve is pretty inelastic because these people are addicted. When is a good harvest bad for farmers? This is a diagram. Demand is still inelastic. Elasticity of supply, same formula. Of course, you have to use this. This is the example. You have to solve this example. So the answer is, you will always get positive answer, 0.55. That is, if a 1% increase in price will lead to an increase of 5.55% quantity supplied. Elasticity supply, these are different elasticity. These are different supply curve with different elasticities. Perfectly inelastic supply, that is vertical line. So you can see if demand changes, quantity will not change because supply is fixed. Just read this, right? It's self-explanatory. Income elasticity. This is, I've already discussed everything. Cross price elasticity. There's an example of cross price elasticity. Make sure you know how to calculate. And then I told you that if cross price elasticity of demand, they don't write price, but I always write cross price elasticity of demand. If the coefficient is positive, two goods are substitutes. If the coefficient is negative, two goods are complements. This is the last slide that I wanted to show you. Price elasticity of demand and supply. I know that this is a negative number, but we always ignore this negative sign. If it is less than 1, inelastic. If it is exactly equal to 1, unitary elastic or unit elastic. If it is greater than 1, elastic. And if it is very high, infinite, right? Or it is 0. So it ranges from 0 to infinity, okay? Then you have income elasticity. If you have a negative number, whatever number is, whether it's less than 1 or greater than 1, doesn't matter. All goods are inferior goods. If it is positive number, you have two cases. If this positive is less than 1, necessities. If it is greater than 1, luxuries. Both are normal goods. So necessities and luxuries both are normal goods, right? And then for cross price elasticity, it is much easier. So hold on a second. So cross price elasticity, you can see if it is less than 0, negative, complements, the two goods are complements. And if it is greater than 0, two goods are substitutes. So that's all as far as this chapter is concerned. So we discussed definition, calculation, and determinants of price elasticity of demand. We also discussed the difference between slope and elasticity, if you remember. We also talked about relationship between elasticity and total revenue, if you remember. I just gave you 3 examples of real-world examples of elasticity, that is price elasticity of demand. And then finally, we talked about elasticity of supply, income elasticity, that is inferior good, normal necessities, normal luxuries, and cross-price elasticity of demand, that is complements or substitutes. So let me stop here. This is all as far as chapter number 4, part 2 is concerned. Thank you very much. Take care. Bye-bye.